Hey, listen up. Yeah, we here and we locked in. Let's keep it going all the way to the top 10. We fear the turtles, so it's no other option. Fred and Ryan, just watch them. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell.
All right, guys, welcome back. It is your boys at Shell and Tell. It is Thursday, February 9th, and in this week's episode of Shell and Tell, we're going to talk about that crazy last-minute push of the National Signing Day, the thing that kept us off the mics for so long, because Ahmed's a very busy boy during that time of year, to see how we finished out. Was it a win? Was it a loss? Maybe somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. The men's hoop squad playing really well of late. We discuss what the difference has been. Will this team make a run at the tourney? And Ryan gets in his feelings on the support or lack thereof from the fan base of this team. He's tired of the excuses, people.
I believed it for too long, Fred.
And we'll wrap up the show. Maryland lacrosse officially kicked off their 2023 season last weekend. So we will touch on the start of spring sports.
Hell of a way to open the year for sure.
Yeah, before we get to our national championship team, let's talk about the team on the football field. National Signing Day 2023. We kind of came into the day pretty clear on what the objectives were. We had 3 names out there, not a lot of replacement names floating around. It was boom or bust on these options, and we went 1 for 3. So how did you guys take that day?
I mean, if you're looking at it from a baseball perspective, you're a Hall of Famer at 1 for 3, right? It's batting 333. No, I mean, honestly, I think that's kind of where I thought we would be. I personally didn't see the Twins splitting up. I know, Ryan, maybe like a week prior to the announcement, you and Guy kind of engaged on some stuff. And then we saw, I think there was like a post that said something about, on social media, like I'm going to be committing, not we're going to be committing. I'm going to be committing on whatever day it was. We thought, I wonder if this could be a split of the Twins. And it ended up working out that way. Ahmed, what were your feelings on that? Were you caught by surprise by the split?
No, because I mean, I knew, so I'd heard, the week before, like I had heard it was a possibility. I feel like there's just been, especially this recruiting cycle, I feel like there's a couple times where it's like you kind of hear things and it's like kind of takes you a while to really believe it. And I don't think it really kind of sounded like a reality maybe until the night before, at least based on what I heard. And then kind of obviously that morning of, they, went their separate ways. And, kind of going back even to December, I kind of posted, Mom was on board, Mike was on board, Andrew was kind of 50-50. And it just kind of never seemed to really move. Like it seemed at some point down the stretch going into the February signing period that, there was some confidence that Andrew was going to, kind of come on board, obviously Mom with the support of Mom, and with Mike, obviously just looking to go to Maryland. And it kind of felt like even there was going to be some confidence on the stretch that, that was going to kind of get over the hump. And both of them are going to come to Maryland. Very rarely. I mean, I know it's happened. It's happened a couple of times. UCF split on a couple Twins in the past as well. I don't know that I have covered a pair of twins that have split up at the college level. So I think that's kind of why maybe I was a little hesitant at first. But I think at the end of the day, both of them really just kind of went with their gut. They Andrew wanted to go to UCF, Mike wanted to go to Maryland. So I think it all kind of worked out. Well, we'll see who has the better career now.
I'm curious, like what the desire was behind that. Was it NIL driven for one or both? Was it opportunity driven? Like, were they going to see the field in their positions? Like, I wonder really what the ultimate deciding factor was, because obviously one's staying closer to home, one's moving out of the nest. It's kind of interesting to see, the dynamic of that with Twins.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's honestly just came down to, from what I had heard, just the desire to stay closer to home versus going further away.
Okay.
And I think Mike obviously was on board with that and showed very little resistance at an early stage ever since Travis Robinson. He went to Arkansas to become the defense coordinator. Mike was, kind of on board with Maryland. Andrew was kind of never really there. I know Mom didn't really want either of them going to UCF. So that was kind of another angle that Andrew kind of had to kind of navigate through. So, but everything I heard was just kind of location based.
I wonder how that looks long term, Ryan. Obviously, you have the connection with twin daughters, and you're just kind of starting to see the separation of the two and what that looks like. You've been doing these like daddy daughter dates with the individuals and taking them out and separating them, and they're good for a little while, but then immediately they're like, "Oh, where's my sister?" Like, do you think that this it could be a long term success with these twins, or do you think there will be some missing of each other?
I honestly think this is best case scenario for Maryland. Maybe it's because the recent burns. Maybe it's the Mitchell twins standing in my back pocket, where it was the Mitchell twins versus the world, and they just basically split the locker room because his brother wasn't good enough to play. I know there's that, and then there's also just I'm going through the period now where my daughters are going to kindergarten. They've already been telling me in preschool to split them up because it works on their independence and everything else. And I've read all the research there is to read about the twins and what the benefits of them being together versus separate and establishing their own community, their own circle, their own support networks, versus just kind of being in the shadow of one another. So when I started getting this feeling, which was about a week before it became, a news talking point that there was a chance, I started, talking to you about how the benefits this were, and even went on the Inside the Black and Gold boards talking, and then a few people there were like, well, if they're going to split up, like, just cut bait and don't even, bring either one of them on. I'm just like, nope, pump the brakes. Like, everything says this is a good move. Like, it won't be the twins versus the rest of the linebackers. It will be meeting new friends, getting to be part of the Terp family. If the second twin joins next year, that's an even better world where we have an establishment. No, these guys are cool. You'll like them. It'll be fine. And bring them into the fold that way instead of it being us versus the world. So I really like what happened here. Of course, I'm not going to be mad if we get 2 4-star twins, but I do think long term this may end up better if he does leave to UCF. You lost 1 4-star. We've done it before. It is what it is. But I think more than likely the twin that went out for the true independence, the true new experience, has a better chance of bringing brother to him than running back home. I just, that as a 20-year-old man, I don't think that's the direction it goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then obviously the other prize jewel of the National Signing Day, Nicholas Harbor, guy we've been following for a while now since his recruitment started. We all had hopes. I mean, none of us really, I think, believed that it was going to happen, right? But I think as this thing got closer, we thought, well, maybe it's us versus Oregon, Nike versus Under Armour, and all that.
And I was cool with either option. I'm like, cool, it makes sense. Nike outbid us. It is what it is. And, he's not going to be, it's not some douchebag midget down there at fake-ass USC that gets to get the win. So I was pretty cool with Oregon. I was like, this is cool, best of both worlds. And then Ahmed broke my heart a few hours before the signing and said, well, it looks like Oregon's out. It's now us and USC. And as soon as I heard USC, I was like, oh no, I don't like them involved in the coin flip at all.
And the way I look at this from the outside in is that this had to have 100% been NIL driven more than anything, because
careful, they're suing Chuck. I'm not on the hook for this one.
I'm just saying, listen, when you start looking at, like, if it was really track driven, it would have 100% been Oregon. Like that, they have the best track facility. So if it was that, it would have been Oregon. If it was, I want to stay home, it would have been Maryland. USC just kind of comes out of nowhere. Yeah, I mean, and then it takes me back to some of the recruitment stuff when he was here and doing his visit, and he was here with Tree and all that stuff. Was it just this big troll job, and they both knew at that point that they were going to USC regardless, and just trying to live out the life and suck up the freebie stuff while they can? But
the good news is we don't get trolled. Like, we don't expect good things here, so you can't troll us. Right. We're untrollable.
Yeah, I don't think it. Yeah, I mean, Tree, I think that could have very well been a troll, and kind of after the fact. I know I kind of messaged, or I posted on the message board that I kind of felt that that there was some trolling and kind of stringing along down the stretch in that one. But with Nick, I don't think it was really kind of like that. Kind of even going into the Oregon visit, I mean, I'd posted, I felt that Maryland was the team to beat. There was no doubt in December they were the team to beat. Obviously, I think, going into the Oregon visit, I think the Oregon visit also kind of highlighted, or maybe magnified some of the concerns or the weaknesses when it came to Maryland. So I don't think that was very beneficial. But yeah, I mean, everything I heard with South Carolina was that it was NIL. Even going into the fall, whatnot. I mean, what I heard from in regards to South Carolina Harbor was that Harbor always loved Shane Beamer. Like he was a very big fan of Shane Beamer.
Yuck.
And obviously, I mean,
Bad
they
taste.
had some friends in there. Obviously, Desmond Umeozulu heading to Columbia, Zabari Sandys, another guy. So they've been able to kind of pluck away. And I posted on the board. I expect Braden Lee, the 4-star corner from Flowers. I expect him to go to South Carolina as well. So I think it was just kind of more so of it Maryland just kind of found themselves fading and fading quickly, and it seemed to happen very much after Oregon. I mean, I heard after the Oregon visit, felt like as soon as that happened, it was Maryland was on the outside looking in. It
Yeah.
felt like it was Oregon and then South Carolina and then Oregon and then South Carolina. But every single point, it felt like Maryland was that team that was just kind of watching, and that was a little bit tough. So obviously, that was a recruitment that took a lot of resources, man hours, spanned over
Yeah.
2 years. So uh, no doubt that one stinks.
Yeah, that one doesn't come from lack of effort by any means on our end. I mean, they put in the time, they put in the effort. It just, it ultimately came down to his final decision, man. It was a
Yeah,
crazy,
kid's got to
crazy
make a
recruitment.
decision for him. I ain't mad at
Yeah.
the kid at all. I do
Oh,
not
no.
understand it. I would have been much more understandable at Oregon, but it is what it is. He decided where he's going to go. The other big thing wasn't
He
quite
can have
national.
fun catching that passes from that douchebag Spencer, though. Can't stand that
Yeah,
kid.
don't you get real mad about what you say, but you don't like
Cannot
Spencer from
stand that kid.
QB1. You don't they get real mad about that. I want to thank personally Chuck Douglas, by the way, because I had a lot of receipts floating out there, and South Carolina had these receipts, and I was expecting them to come from my head, and I wasn't gonna dodge him. I wasn't blocking it. I was just gonna let it happen. But Chuck Dunn took it on the chin.
Yeah, he did.
He went out there and lit the world on fire, talking about pay for play and everything, and they forgot about little old Terps BS spurt that they were all whining about for 2 weeks beforehand. So they were no longer worried about me. They were sending cease and desist letters and lawsuits to Mr. Chuck Douglas down here. Super fan for the Terps protected the shield.
Here, Chuck.
Here, Chuck. Well, the other thing that wasn't quite National Signing Day, but probably even more impactful, was we finally got the official word we all kind of knew was coming that Leah is back in the year for another fold. It can't be understated how big that is. I guess we could talk about that. And then the last piece of hanging fruit, too. When do we hear from JJ? This really is kind of that last piece we're all waiting to hear.
Yeah, JJ. I don't know what the announcement, what that kind of looks like. I mean, I kind of quietly posted it in my article today about the Maryland being a sleeper pick in 2023 by ESPN. I mean, JJ is back with the team. He's doing workouts, whatnot. So I think it's just kind of
So he
semantics
just
at this
doesn't want
point.
to say anything because he wants to play spring ball and then make a decision. Is that where we're at?
That's-
It's like, I'm
yeah.
just going to be here at spring ball and probably stay. I'll talk about it later.
I saw his mom put something on Twitter today about college sports being a business, so it could be just coming down to dollars and cents. Who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I know, I'd posted before, NIL was something that, was kind of something that he wanted to at least, kind of discuss with Loxley and whatnot. And, there's obviously discussions on NIL and whatnot, those are always ongoing. But, Deshaun Jones, has been able to kind of take advantage of some events through TBIA Foundation. I expect them back in 2023. I've kind of been consistent with that really throughout. Everyone I've talked to, I mean, it's not even to the point where they're like, oh, like I think there's a real chance he leaves. Like, no, I mean, every single person I've talked to is like, yeah, it looks like he's coming back, or yeah, like I think it's just a matter of timing. So until someone tells me otherwise, I expect the sixth season out of him. But
Good.
yeah, obviously, Talia Tagovailoa, obviously with him coming back, it's hard to believe that it's been 4 years, or
I
this will be
know.
the 4th year. It's kind of
Kinda.
wild.
I mean, the first year barely counts, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think I
6
thought,
games or 5 games, whatever we played.
I think I just thought about it because it's just like when was the last time Maryland went 4 seasons knowing who their starting quarterback was? And yeah, Talia missed what I believe 1 game during COVID. Obviously,
Right.
Yeah.
a game this past year. But I mean, just to kind of have that stability at quarterback. Obviously, I posted over through this week that him, Billy Edwards, been able to get a lot of wide receiver or reps with the wide receivers inside the Jones Hill House through player run practices. So yeah, I mean, at this point, Talia, I think we know what he is, and I think that he's the guy that he's proven that you can win a Big Ten game with him. Obviously, Maryland will always have to figure out, the limitations in terms of his size and teams kind of capitalizing on that to load up pressure in certain fronts. But, I think at the end of the day, like I said, you can win with him. They were able to kind of build up the trenches to give him some time, and they reloaded at wide receiver. So this offense is in good hands with him now.
Yeah, the offense is in good hands. And like you said, I fully believe Jay Sean will be back. So this team's going to be stocked at all the skill positions. They're going to be loaded at running back, going to be loaded at wide receiver, going to have your consistency at quarterback with Leah. The biggest question mark that still needs to be answered is who's going to be calling plays, right? We still know that like it's Loxley's system and all of that, but Ryan and I were at the basketball game the one night, and I'm flipping through social media, and I see a picture of Loxley standing there at the game with Byron Leftwich.
I was so excited.
Ryan instantly gets all euphoric.
Yeah, insider information for all the Shell and Tellers out here. The day Byron Leftwich was fired, I shot a text message to every Terp fan that I text with, all of Therap and Thunderdome, everyone, that I said, this is the hire. This is the guy that is seeing that the NFL does not have a future for him. They're still the boys club. You got to be somebody's son to be a head coach. And he's coming back to college where everyone's being successful making this transition. And where's a better place to do it than with Loxley and the head of the Minority Coaches Coalition and all these things that he's got going on. Where's a better place to start than that? And then he's at the basketball game with me. I lost my mind.
Yeah, he did. He definitely did. And I would love it too. I just never thought it was reality because Maryland just doesn't pay their assistants. Like they don't pay them in comparison.
I'm not saying he's staying. He just needs a year so we can go to a different school.
I just feel like there'd be a bigger or better opportunity for him.
Sounds like there is.
Sounds like there's some rumors about him maybe going to Notre Dame, and he's still got some NFL, interviews lined up too. So who knows what's going to happen? But have you heard any buzz with offensive coordinator Ahmed?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the coaching stuff's been real quiet right now. Obviously, Locks, I posted on the site. Locks has been all over. I know he was in town, I believe Monday, and then ever since then, I believe he's been down getting ready for Super Bowl down in Phoenix, whatnot. So it's been pretty quiet right there. About last week, I expected that we would kind of have some names surface or at least some formidable candidates at this point, or maybe the next couple of days, things like that. So we'll kind of see. But I think there's kind of a lot that Loxley kind of has to address in terms of coaching staff right now.
Well, it turned out to not, materialize, and I won't go too deeply into it. But I want to thank the fans out there for growing Shell and Tell big enough that we are able to have weird people follow us and go, hey, that's strange. What do you have to do with Maryland? And then get our boy Ahmed to check it out and know there's something to it. So pretty cool that it's gotten to that point where the inside information is now just funneled through my Twitter.
Man. All right, so speaking of social media, there were some clips floating around on social media recently involving Mike Loxley, Jalen Hurts, Nick Saban. Nick Saban spoke pretty candidly about the Jalen Hurts recruitment situation when he was leaving Alabama. Do you have that clip, Ryan? Or?
And when he wanted to transfer, I said, well, who has the best player? He wanted to go to Maryland or Miami. I said, you need to go to Oklahoma. They got the best coach to develop you as a quarterback, and you're going to be around the best players, so that's going to enhance your chances of having success. He did that. He had a great year. I was worried about having to play him in the playoffs, and I can't tell you how proud I am of seeing this guy in the Super Bowl.
All right, so you stole another one. We could have had that QB stabilization that Ahmed just spoke about for Talia just a little bit earlier. Like year one with Loxley. That's what we could have had at year one, this Super Bowl quarterback.
This team wasn't set up or ready for a Jalen Hurts at that time. Would it have been great? Absolutely. Having that name and having that kind of like play at quarterback would have been great. But realistically, I mean, what he said was accurate. I mean, not that the coaching staff there could better prepare him, but his better chance of success 100% was going to be Oklahoma at that time.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think it was just more so the fact that he would talked about the development side. I think that's kind
Yeah.
of where I think Loxley is in the right to kind of stick up for himself. And I think Wade even mentioned it in the forum yesterday when I posted the article. But this, like the Nick Saban comments about Jalen Hurts, I remember seeing that last summer. So this is not the first time it's kind of resurfaced and kind of come back in the news. I think it's just good for Loxley to kind of stick up for himself. I know obviously when the Josh Gaddis stuff came up. What was it, last year or 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Loxley, did the same thing where he stuck up for himself and wasn't out of line. But yeah, I mean, he kind of pats himself on the back.
Well, let's hear exactly what Loxley had to say about all this.
Coach Saban said something earlier this week.
Piss me off.
Yeah, good.
Don't piss me off. I'm glad. Let's get to it, man.
I played the audio yesterday, and he made the comment for people that weren't listening yesterday. I know Coach
the
Loxley.
best quarterback to develop him.
And he said that he wanted to go to Maryland to play for you or Miami.
For Dan.
But Coach Saban said, no, don't go there. Go to Oklahoma, which is my alma mater, so we appreciated that. But we listened to that yesterday and said,
I
man.
wish he would have had that same energy when he begged me to stay and through recruiting and sign all 12 of those Evan Neals and all those great players. I should have taken that approach.
Well, is that the way it played out, though? Was that real, what Coach Saban was saying?
No, I think so. I mean, I know Jalen had a lot of respect for Nick's opinion. I know dealing with his dad through that process as well. They knew I had gotten the Maryland job. He came, took an official visit there. Dan ended up taking Miami. He visited both of our programs. But I think ultimately, Nick gave him the best advice. He could have come to Maryland and done some tremendous things there. It was a familiar system, a familiar offense. I beg to differ that when Coach says he went and played for the best guy to develop a quarterback, because after he finished at Oklahoma that year, when it was time to prepare for the draft, he flew to Maryland for a week and a half to prepare for it. But Nick didn't know that part of it.
Nick didn't know. Maybe that should have been the title of the episode. Nick didn't know. Flex on him, coach.
Man, I just thought it was kind of interesting. I like I said, I had heard this last year that there were rumors that he was actually potentially going to come here, and man, just the thought of having a guy like that level of a quarterback, like you said, in year one of Loxley being in here, I wonder what the fan base would have thought with that. That kind of swing and home run on year one. Would have been unreal.
He was in Xfinity Center sitting next to him. I mean, it felt that close.
Yeah, it felt like it was a realistic chance. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. I felt like Loxley's kind of always been able to kind of hold Saban to kind of feels like just like a different level of kind of respect. But yeah, you kind of wonder how much the tune changes. Also, coaches retract and backtrack all the time. I have a feeling that Saban probably is already quietly, or if it hasn't done so already, will probably privately say, "Hey, my bad on that."
Yeah. And honestly, this whole thing, the biggest thing that pops out to me is not what's that Saban got him to go away. How hard was that to get him to go from Maryland, away from Maryland to that point? The biggest thing is, again, showing the relationships that Mike Loxley has with these kids, that he can leave the other school he was at. He wants to follow you there. Then he, spurs you in recruiting, decides, I'm not following you, coach. I'm going to Oklahoma. And you're still there for him 10 games later to be able to train for the NFL. Like, this kind of relationship with the kids just is not a reality for a lot of these coaches. I know there are plenty of coaches out here that are doing great things for the kids, but there's also plenty of them that are just cashing checks on their backs. And Mike Loxley proves time and time again that he stays with these people forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah, shout out to him especially for highlighting that as well.
Before we move on to basketball, one last thing. I do want to give a shout out to the boys, the seniors down at the Senior Bowl the other day. A couple guys shined. Chad Ryland, I think he was 4 or 5, I think, from field
4 or 5,
goals.
yeah, missed a 52-yarder.
Yep, that would have looked like he just tried to kick it a little too hard, and it ended up instead of going end over end, went kind of sideways on him. But had a big game. Jacorian Bennett obviously made the late game interception there to kind of seal it for his squad.
What an end to your college career, to win a bowl game with a game-sealing interception and then go to the Senior Bowl and do the same thing. If that doesn't open some eyes,
epic.
I don't know what will. He already had all the ball defenses. He didn't have some interceptions to back it up, and he stacks them right there at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not a lot of no run for Jalen Duncan during the game, but he definitely improved his draft stock, because I will say, we had high NFL draft status and grades on him before last season. Then this season, he kind of, I think in all of our eyes, took a little bit of a step back. And that could have, like I said, I was telling you, Ryan, the other day, that could have just been comfort, knowing that he was going to be a top round pick, that maybe he got a little bit laxed and a little bit lazy in some of his stuff that he was doing, his preparation, and just, I don't know. It could just be reading into it, because what you heard about the buzz around him at the Senior Bowl during practices was all good. So I'm sure he just elevated his draft stock going down to the Senior Bowl for sure.
Yeah, I've seen some mock drafts have him as a first rounder. I saw one that was like, oh, he dropped to a second. But either way, I mean, it's been quite some time since Maryland had a day one or day two selection in the offensive line. So I think that, I mean, I kind of mentioned for offensive line recruiting last year, going into this year, just kind of being able to send some of these guys. Obviously, you have Spencer Anderson, Jahari Branch, possibly UDFA or day three guys. But just be able to send, especially a tackle high in the draft will be a feather in the cap for Brian Braswell for sure.
Yeah, really happy for those guys, and can't wait to hear some names go in the NFL draft. Like we said, we've taken a nice long break from this podcast, and it's been good for the basketball team, guys. We're now 16-8 overall, 7-6 in the Big Ten, 5-2 since our last pod. You're welcome for staying off the airwaves. I started off with the big win over Michigan, 64-58, and then it has a 3-point loss to Purdue. That Michigan game, though, might have got me in trouble, huh, Fred?
Yeah, I will say you had some fans kind of in their feelings. You got in your feelings because, listen, the turnout, the fan support there for the Michigan game wasn't great. Wasn't a good look. I understand that it's again, we look at this as a rival game. It's Michigan, it's Juwan Howard, it's Little Dick, it's all these things that go into this game. You want as much support out there to rub it in his face, and he's doing all the things on the court that just make you hate him even more. So it's even more of a thorn in the side when you see that you don't have anybody out there to yell at him. But I'll let you go off, man.
Yeah, let's start right there. I'll admit there's a lot of bias on my side with that, because there was a little self-hate going on, because we've been waiting 3 years to get Hunter Dickinson at the Xfinity Center. He's been talking trash the whole time. He got to play in an empty court during COVID here. Then the Big Ten helped him out and had no road game last year. We only had to play in their house. So we finally get him into Xfinity Center, and I'm working till midnight on my schedule and had already called out sick for the UCLA game where we got skull dragged. So I really didn't think it was either good juju to call out or good for my financial stability to call out sick for another basketball game. Believe me, I've done my fair part going to games this year. It's a 3-hour commute. It's a 3-hour commute for me, and I've been to more games than almost all the people that replied to me on Twitter. But anyway, yeah, I have for years heard these excuses that we have for Maryland and kind of took them as legitimate complaints and not excuses. And there are some, yes. Is it different for Maryland? Are we in a media market with all pro teams and we're competing against them and not our schools? Sure. But every time we have something, there's a new excuse. And this just exasperated it, because everyone and their brother wanted to cry at me for a different reason why there were no fans in the stands and why it was okay that there are no fans in the stands. How about you read a couple tweets, Fred, and I'll tell you how I feel about them.
All right, so we got one from Michael Levine, 33M Levine on Twitter. Students not back yet from break. Cole was not fun on winter break either.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes. Ahmed's going to be able to respond to this because he's the only one that's been the student here. So I will accept his answer afterwards. But winter break at Maryland is, I don't know, 3 years. They get out in early December and they're going back at the very last week of January. This game was 3 days before classes started. 3 days for a rivalry game to get Hunter Dickinson in here beforehand. Who lives on campus? What, less than 25% of the students? Where are the other 75% to fill these stands? That was the biggest problem with this game. Was they were right. There was like no student presence, and therefore the half-ass adult attendance for this game also made the place look completely empty because their excuses will come later. I just know when I was in college, we went out of our way to do these things. We drove long distances to go to these games. If I was there, I certainly would have returned from my home 3 days before classes started when you've been off 45 days. It's not like it's Christmas time. I get why it's empty for those 3 non-conference games between Christmas and New Year's. January 19th cannot be thought of that way because right now I feel like Maryland's long winter break is the biggest recruiting benefit we have for football because our classes start late and therefore we can dip into the transfer portal and we can grab kids later that other schools can't grab anymore because their classes have already started. We can't have our biggest benefit in football be the biggest detractor in basketball and you not be able to recruit because the football players don't see anybody in the stands at basketball. Stop letting your biggest benefit become your problem. Ahmed, tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, I just remember when I was a student. So my freshman year was Gary's last year, and then obviously second, third, fourth year were the first 3 under Church. But I remember during winter break, you were able to get a guest ticket, believe 1 or maybe 2 per student. So I mean, like during winter break, I don't know that I went to every game, but I went to a lot. Like I remember when we beat NC State. What was it, Turgeon's second or third year? And we got ripped for storming the court. 10 years later, I was one of those guys that stormed the court.
That's cool.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you for storming the court.
Yeah, I mean, even then, I remember like the student section was never crowded, but you would definitely see like parents and things like that. I don't know. I think there's definitely some truth to just not like just winter break and for it to be 6 weeks long that with kids just inherently far away from campus for that long. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I had a lot of friends that went to SEC schools, so like they would usually leave like right around New Year's, things like that. But before then, like I was just normally grabbing a ticket for me and my friends, and we were all going up together. Like there was always usually a group of like at least 6 to 10 of us that
Am
were
I
going to
completely
games.
off base to treat January 19th different than January 30th?
Yeah, and the tickets are free, so like all we have to do is just get in the car and drive for 30 minutes.
And I mean, who's living on campus? Is it even all the freshmen? I don't even know if it's all the freshmen.
I don't think anyone's on campus in winter break unless you're.
No,
like,
I mean like who is on campus the rest of the time? Like is there all 4 years are living on campus, or is it just freshmen like some colleges are?
no, it's all 4. I mean, like South
4
Campus
years.
would be like, at least when I was there, the South Campus, and then like the row or like behind like frat houses or frat row and whatnot. Like those where like all the upperclassmen live, but then like you have like the View Varsity, and that's like what 5-10 minute walk to the
And
stadium.
they're all open during winter break. It's not school
Yeah,
housing.
View and Varsity, all of those are, but on campus, those aren't open.
Yeah. I don't know. And
but-
maybe my numbers are completely wrong. Maybe it's 40% of the students, whatever. I don't really care. All I know is we deserved better for that game. I should have apparently called out sick and went down there, but I would have just been angrier in the stands than I was at home.
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of my issues at the end of the day. I mean, and look, I think there's only a couple hundred tickets that remain for Saturday's game against Penn State. So like it looks like that should be another good atmosphere. But at the end of the day, I mean, you know, UCLA was really the only packed house this year. So that's the only thing that's kind of disappointing with me. I think at the end of the day, students have come back since. So at the end of the day, if the winter break excuse is there, I mean, I'll give them that credit. I guess I don't know, but I think that
Well, we got plenty more excuses to get through, so don't worry. They got more. Go into the next tweet, Fred.
Yeah, before I say anything, I'm going to go ahead and let you get through all these excuses because I'm going to address them
All right.
in a
In a rant. I like
in a
it.
rant. Yeah. All right. So what do we got here? We got coach negative. Love that. Gotta win, but it's bad. Just win and people will come back. Been a disheartening stretch unless you are a diehard. I don't disagree.
At this time, my man was accurate, real accurate. It had been a bad stretch. We had just got our butt kicked by Michigan, just got our butt kicked by UCLA. We were in a bad time. But guess what? We went on a hell of a run after that. We won 3 out of 4 with the only loss being a 3-point loss to then number 3 Purdue. And when went back to Xfinity Center, Still nobody there. The students showed up great. The students looked awesome. The adults, because more excuses coming later, it's too late, I'm so tired. There was nobody in the adult section.
I don't think this guy's excuse, they got to win, but it's bad, just win and people will come back. It's not isolated to what they're doing this season. This is you got to win long term, right? For to get the fans beyond the diehards to come out, the average fans, to get that support out there. It's not just winning in the now. There were so many things that were going into this year that were question marks, right? None of us had high expectations for this team coming into this year because everything was different. The coaching staff was different. And the majority of the fan base, Kevin Willard wasn't their guy. Like, he's worked out and like we're all happy with it now, but going into the year, Kevin Willard wasn't the consensus pick by all the fan base. So there was a lot of things that I think in the beginning of the year, and obviously going through your non-conference schedule, there just wasn't a whole lot of appeal to this year, right? Going up to that Michigan game. And then if that's what we're focusing on is this Michigan game, I do agree with you that yes, it was a shitty turnout for that game. 100%. I agree with you on that. But what you, the diehard, and me, a diehard, look at Michigan and what that is and all the little details of the budding rivalry. It's not a rivalry yet, the budding rivalry because of Juwan Howard, because of Little Dick, all that stuff. There's no history there yet. There's nothing. It's not the
Feels
90s.
like a history. Their coach hits our coach.
It's not yet. It's not the 90s of the Dukes and the North Carolinas and all that stuff. Like that's years and decades of rivalries and close games and being on both sides of it and all that stuff. That takes time to build and to get that the masses to appeal to that matchup, right? So again, if we're focusing on Michigan, I think it's collective. I don't think it was, oh, well, we weren't winning those 2 or 3 games before that. If they would have won those 2 or 3 games before that, they would have had more support. No, this was you got to win as a whole. You got to show that the program's going in the right direction. There was just a lot of question marks around it.
I get that, but there were so many fans that said, just get rid of Turgeon and we'll come back. And where are they? Where are they at? I don't know.
All right, keep going.
Yeah.
We'll go.
So, went on a tweet for this one, but there were plenty out there. I didn't quote anybody on this one, but late tip, 9 p.m. can't make it. Okay, fine. I get it. It is a late night. I'm home at 12:30, 1 a.m. because I have a 90-minute drive and 30 minutes to get out of the parking lot after this game. I'm sure you live closer than that, but it's cool. That's a fine excuse. But it's not a fine excuse when the next tweet underneath it is, oh, it's too early. It's a 7 p.m. game, so the traffic on 495 is too bad. So 7 p.m. is too early and 9 p.m. is too late, and the only acceptable game time is 7:47 and 36 seconds when Mercury's in retrograde. What are you talking about? You can't say both. Right. And that's what we're just going to have. We have Purdue coming up on a Thursday at 6:30, and there's going to be nobody there that's over 19 years old, and everybody's going to cry because they couldn't get there because of the Beltway. Guess what? Leave at 2 p.m.
You're comparing two problems from two different people, though, and that's what it is.
But it's the Maryland fan base. You can't have something that's too late and too early. We can't run both excuses. The reason we are having this conversation is not because these aren't valid for individual games. It's because as a collective fan base and as a diehard, we have let this grow to a point where anyone can have an excuse to not go to any game. And we're just like, oh, cool, you're still a diehard Maryland fan. You're still with us Terps. You're still great, but you won't inconvenience yourself slightly to be anyone.
Can I throw some numbers at you really quick, Ryan?
Enjoy.
Okay. So we all know last year was a complete shit show, right? A complete shit show of a season. The whole Turgeon debacle, Danny Manning, it was a complete shit show, right? I looked up some numbers just to make sure that I wasn't crazy here. So the Big Ten leads all Division I in average attendance for basketballs per game. It's 12,000. The next closest to them is the Big 12 at 10,600 last year, right? So they're at 12,000. Maryland last year, despite all of that crap, again, I don't have this year's numbers because unfortunately they don't have it calculated yet, but last year, 13,052 average per game. Last year, amongst all the bullshit that was going on. You don't think there's more support coming out this year than there was last year through all that?
Man,
and they were higher than
these numbers
average.
are fake as shit. They've said they have 15,000 fans in that stadium almost every game. I've been to all of them. None of them were true. None of them were true.
They
use ticket sales of people that don't show up. They use all the TerraPass tickets and say they're there. They're not there.
that
They've said I was there every game. I've been there 40 to 50% of the games.
I mean, I've been there for 4 games this year too, and I just don't visually see it. Are there games where the student section isn't there as much as they should be? Yes, and it's for all those excuses
And
that,
hey,
that
they
we just
came
went over.
out for Indiana. No shade at all for the student section for Indiana.
There's been a
Apparently
few
they
games.
love 9 p.m. games.
There have been quite a few games this year where a lot of the student section showed up and showed out, and there's been a lot of games this year where the adult section, we'll say, the non-student section, has shown up too.
Well, let's let the adult in the room tell me about the ticket thing, since we cut him off after we asked him a question.
No, I think you guys are valid. Yeah, I think, in terms of, the ticket numbers and whatnot, like, definitely not say, like Fred, I think your numbers are right, but yeah, I mean, I do agree that, last year just there were a lot of games where it was just very, very, very empty.
Oh yeah,
and
rightfully so with the way the program was going then.
exactly. I mean, first losing season in what, 30 years. So, I mean, I get why the numbers were like that. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like Maryland this year will probably end up being, top 25 in attendance. It's just, I think that what resonates with me is just the lack of like consistent sellouts. It's not like it's a boring brand of basketball that's being played.
What's the benefit of lying about our attendance? Because I don't really understand the benefit.
Like, see, look at like you're ranked high.
I guess so. It's a sales pitch to future kids saying this is how many you're playing in front of.
I guess
there's no financial benefit really, right? I don't. You're getting
you
the
only
ticket
sell
money
what
whether
you
they're there or
sell.
not. I guess, I mean, there's the attendance is not ticket sales. And I don't understand why they use the word attendance. Just say ticket sales, 15,000 people. Cool. Don't tell me what the attendance is then. But the word attendance means that the person is there. And this is not a Maryland problem. This is a sports problem. This is a Ravens problem. This is attendance has a definition and we ignore it in the sports world.
But I'm just saying, like, if we're lying, then why isn't everybody else lying?
Why would we be the ones?
Why would be no? Okay, well then, if everybody's lying, again, these numbers are last year. Maryland
because we can lie up to 17, and they can only lie up to 10 that fits in their stadium.
No, that is not true. Maryland averaged 13,000. Michigan averaged 11,900. Ohio State averaged 13,200. So right on par with us. And we're talking about the blue bloods of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So why are they not lying then to make themselves look better?
I guess the stadium's just too damn big. The stadium feels empty when you go there, and it's not exciting at times.
I think your expectations are skewed. Because again, you are a diehard. You'll do everything that you can to show up for these games. That's not what the mass fan base is. The mass fan base is average fan base. And the average fan base needs a winning product in order to bring them out, especially again in this market. That is the way all Maryland teams are. And I'm not talking the University of Maryland. I'm talking all professional teams in Maryland. It needs to be a winning product for fans to come out and support it. It's just the way that the state operates.
So we can complain about it. Unless you're the Commanders, ain't nobody give a fuck about going to watch the Commanders.
Exactly, because they're terrible, historically terrible.
All right, well, we run through the end of this and I'll give up because apparently nobody understands my pain.
No, I
understand the pain. I just...
Yeah, I agree. Like, I agree. And like, at the end of the day, like I hear these excuses, and yeah, I mean it's tough. Like for football, it's tough. This is coming up on year 10, and I still tell people, hey, best thing we can do is show up to games, and it's just like it feels like it falls on deaf ears. So like I completely agree. And when you see I've seen it. 7 p.m. is too early. You get caught in traffic. 7:30, that arena's full. I think what looks good, what looks promising is that Saturday. It's Saturday at noon. There's no
only 500 tickets left.
Yeah, exactly.
The
and
stars
I think
have aligned. Apparently,
or did they lie about that too?
No, I mean,
is that what we're doing now? Are we?
There will be 2,000 less people.
You
than
got
they
Johnny
say there
Holiday lying on Twitter about it. Is that what's happening?
The tickets are sold, which is a big benefit over before. Because I swear to God, they were saying more people were there than there were tickets sold. Many of these games, I don't understand. I'm looking on my phone app and seeing 4,000 tickets for sale in a 17,000 ticket stadium, but they tell me 16,000 people are here. What are you talking about? I don't understand.
Yeah,
We
I
get
just don't
excuses
see it,
that we
though,
can't
man.
win the game. That team's too good. We get excuses the opponent's not good enough, so we don't want to see it. Those are both sides of the same argument. Literally, the best one I had was Kaiser Sezo, who commented a bunch of things we've already heard, but there was one thing that I wanted to highlight in this one because it made my whole brain explode, and I almost muted the thread.
Oh,
11 years of an awful coach who left his players behind and gave up recruiting, followed the students still being out. All of this we've covered, all relevant. And a rainy Thursday night with a team that has gotten absolutely decimated recently, and it would be foolish to expect more. We are talking about
I agree with
rain.
that statement 100%.
We're
That's
talking
just
about
part
rain
of it.
for an
That's
indoor
part of it.
sport, Fred.
That's
get
the
rest
fucking
has
cherry
valid.
on the sundae, Ryan. That was like
this
the
is where my brain
smallest part.
exploded. We are talking about rain for an indoor sport. An indoor sport. I have stood in rain, sleet, snow for football all day long.
Two different
and we
arguments.
are talking about rain indoors.
Two different arguments. The
I know
fan
Xfinity's
support
getting old, but the roof works, Fred. The roof fucking works.
I get that. But the fan support argument for football is a totally different
Rain.
argument than it is for basketball.
Right, they brought up rain for basketball. Rain. All right, so
man.
I can't anymore. Like, I'm done
Yeah,
with the excuses.
he didn't have to throw that
If you
in there,
don't
but
want to
everything
go
else
to the
was right
game,
on.
don't go to the game. It's cool. But stop saying the reason you didn't, because the reason you didn't is because you didn't want to get off your couch and stop looking at the HGTV TV
That's the
that has
problem.
made the experience better for you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why you're not there. It's the only reason
You're
you're
doing
not
my
there.
job
The
for me.
rest of
Thank
these
you.
excuses are garbage. You are comfortable pooping in your own toilet and eating your own food. That's why you're not there. So just admit it. Just say, I'm never coming back, no matter what you all do. And let us decide to make that stadium an 11,000-person stadium where we can all sit in recliners and enjoy ourselves.
They'll be
Because
back,
You're
Ryan.
not coming back.
They'll be back when the masses come back because it's a monkey see, monkey do world that we live in this state. That's just how it is. If everybody else is going to come out, so will they.
Yeah,
That's just
All right.
how it is.
I agree.
So what
And I
have you
agree.
done for me lately?
And I agree with Fred's point that it's I do separate football versus basketball because and I say
Oh.
this as a football guy, and just to be completely honest and transparent about it, like the basketball atmosphere is just so much more fun. And obviously just with it being indoor, I mean, hell, I've told people privately, when it comes time November, December, I would rather go to a basketball game to cover than a football game because I don't want to stand outside for 30 or for 3 hours, 2 hours, however long it is. So like I do separate the arguments, but
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying the rain it would be a problem with an argument for football, 100%. I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
I mean,
if
rain-
you're going to
rain-
argue about rain indoors, then
Rain and
that's-
sun
you're-
sucks in that stadium, especially on your seats.
Again,
Sun
rain
really
is a
sucks on your
completely
seats.
relevant argument for an outdoor sport.
Yeah.
He
I'm
used it as an
messing with you.
indoor sport argument, and that's
I'm messing with you,
mind-blowing.
Ryan. I agree. It was stupid. He didn't need to throw that in there, but 80% of his points were valid.
Yes, 100%. We already covered that all those things are valid, but again, it's the reason is because you're comfy at home. That's it.
All right. Moving on, right? So the team's doing good. So it's like you said, since the podcast, man, the team's gone 5-2. They had 4 in a row wins over Wisconsin, Nebraska, Indiana, Minnesota before Tuesday night's loss to Michigan State, which was flashbacks of UCLA and Tennessee kind of combined into one game. You had they go on a 15-0 run to start the game, and I thought, I'm ready to turn this off. This is fucking terrible. But then the team, again, defensively, like they have all year, stepped up, figured out a way to get it down to single digits before half, and I felt a lot better about things at that point. Actually ended up getting a 4-point lead late in the second half, but ended up losing the game by 4 or 5, I think was the final score. But
5, yeah. The spread is 4.5 as well.
yeah,
But yeah, it was obviously. I mean, I think we've all kind of fallen, become, I guess, accustomed to just the slow starts over the years.
yeah.
And yeah, like you said, when it started off 15-0, it did not exactly bode well or sit well. So I thought it was, kind of just a testament to Willard. I mean, he talked about it post game, just saying, just kind of staying in the Midwest, and they had a really bad day of practice the day before, and he felt that it kind of reflected that. I think Willard just kind of sidestep. I think Willard does a really good job and has done a really good job this season to just kind of taking accountability when those losses get like that, when it just is really ugly basketball. He's kind of transparent about taking, having it fall on his shoulders. But yeah, I mean, obviously, you just kind of for them to be able to come back. I thought, obviously, Jameer Young, obviously, despite the 3-point shooting, Jameer Young thought he continued to do well. and we'll see where Don Carey, if he's able to kind of find his
Oh
shot as well.
God.
We'll get to the Don Carey later. Let's stay positive for a minute, right?
Okay.
All right. Well, we're going to hold that Don Carey thing a little bit longer. I know Fred wants to go into a rant about that, like I just did about the fans, but let's stay a little positive. We get
for
into
now.
why this has gone so differently, and it's the found identity. This team defense has been really good in this group of wins here, and it was really, really bad. We had 4 losses starting at UCLA. 3 of them, the opponent scored over 80, and in that stretch, we only had 1 win over a Power 5 team, which was Ohio State, and we had to score 80 to do so. The defense was gone. The thing that won all our games at the beginning of the year did not exist. Since that time period, since the last blowout by Iowa, we've had a 7 games stretch, including only 2 losses. And even in the losses, no one scored over 63 points on us. Defense has been solid throughout the entire time. Have we not been able to hit the broadside of the barn with 3 sometimes and you lose? Sure. But the defense, your identity, has carried them through this stretch.
Yeah, the defense is absolutely what's keeping them around in these games, allowing them to come back in situations when they're not shooting the ball well. And it's been team defense too, right? It's not just been 1 or 2 guys. I mean, it's been collective. It's even been some of the guys off the bench. One of the guys that I know Ahmed and I have talked a little bit about in previous shows, the unsung hero, Patrick Emilian. He's done really well. He won't show up on the stat sheet like you say, but man, I tell you, every time that he comes in there, there's not a drop off. If anything, it's a step up in defensive play from Emilian. And again, it's across the board. It's everybody on this team stepping up and playing good defense.
And I feel like, I mean, even touching on Emilian, I feel like it's kind of at the point where, kind of going into the year, I think the front court depth was really the biggest concern. I mean, no one really knew
100%.
how Emilian was going to project, but it's kind of at the point where, at least in my mind, the front court isn't a weakness, or it's not like a glaring concern. Obviously, now it's a 3-point shooting. But yeah, I mean, in terms of defense, I mean, you felt it's a sense of confidence that, in game 1, when you see Willard's, first game and the new system, a lot of new players just gelling together, and that intensity and the efficiency is kind of still being able to translate well, going into now mid-February.
Yeah, and unlike earlier in the season, the vote of confidence for Patrick Emilian is not shade at Juju. There was a stretch there where the fans were falling off the Juju bandwagon and not understanding what he was bringing to the team, and he has shut a lot of people up. One of them might be Demaya.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's me. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I'll have to eat my words here. This is what I said on the last pod. Biggest frustration for me, and it was a problem that we knew we were going to have this year, is that they just don't have anybody that can put their back to the basket, use their weight, drive down to the hole, and get easy, high percentage shots. They just don't have that. Reese is supposed to be that kid, and he's not. He doesn't use his size. He's sloppy down low. Anytime somebody puts any kind of weight on him, he loses all control of the ball. Like, it's just, I hate labeling somebody soft, but that's basically where his game is at right now. He's playing soft basketball, and you can't have that, because he's literally your only threat down low. Yeah. And let me tell you, I am glad to eat those words, because I had such high expectations going into the season for Juju. I predicted at the beginning of the year he was going to average a double-double. That's like where my expectations were. And I think that's why I was so frustrated, is because he wasn't living up to expectations. But he would show you these like flashes here and there. You're like, he can fucking do it. He just needs to be a little bit more aggressive and not in a
and now his biggest problem is the refs hate him.
Yeah,
that's there is a book on him at this point. The refs are like, yeah, your face, I don't like it.
He's got a little Jay Sean Jones in him. He could be a little reactive to things in a negative sense. It gets him into foul trouble, but there are also a lot of ticky-tack fouls that get caught against him as well. But when you talk the difference of what this team has been, yes, defense is number 1. Close second has been the production in the paint, and it starts with Juju, because again, he's being more physical down low. He's under control down low. I mean, he's making shots from both sides of the rim, using both arms. He's going up and being aggressive and dunking the ball when the situation calls for it. He's starting to figure it out and kind of come into his own. So I'm just really, really happy to see that, because this team is really only going to be able to go as far as Juju can help them go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and obviously he had to go against Trace Jackson Davis, and Zach Edey, and both of
Yeah,
those guys.
and
I mean,
held his own.
you can make the argument for probably either one of them that they're the best big man in the country right now. And yeah, Julian Riccio held his own. Obviously, Edey is just a beast with that size. And defensively, I still don't know how you stop him. But yeah, I mean, you can make the argument. Obviously, 3-point shooting is obviously the biggest concern, and obviously, how
Yeah.
do you fix that? It's just it's a little bit tougher because that's just you got to just shoot out of a slump. But Juju's efficiency down low, and we've kind of been able to see flashes of it from Dante Scott, and obviously Dante. Everyone knew that he was able to kind of stretch the floor a little bit, and he's been able to do that. He was able to do it against Michigan State as well, and he's been able to provide some in the paint. But Juju's efficiency in the paint is probably Maryland's X factor to determine, just how successful the season can be. Because I think at this point, to me at least, it's pretty clear that this is a team that can has a chance to be playing for a while.
Absolutely. And when, like you said, going into this year, and even Willard said earlier in the year, this team was going to live and die by the 3-point ball. And we've seen that up until recently, because even in games like the other night against Michigan State, when they shot the ball like complete shit from three, it was their ability to work inside and get the ball into the paint that kept them in the game on top of their defense. So, like you said, they are starting to form this identity where if you would have asked me 4 weeks ago, if I thought that this was a tourney team, I would have said no way. I didn't think they were going to make a tourney run just with the way they are. But if they can continue this trend and continue to improve on that, and Juju can stay out of foul trouble, not only will they make the tourney, but I think they'll be a high seed. I think they'll be in that like 7-8 seed.
It speaks to development. I mean, this is exactly what we have not seen under Turgeon for years. We saw them fall off in February and March when people were getting better around them. And it's like his savage quote said, this is Juju's year one. And you saw that when the schedule was jam-packed and they could not practice, that run that ran up to Tennessee where they just and UCLA where they just ran out of legs because they were playing every other game and never had a chance to practice, and were traveling all over the country and with no breaks. Juju fell apart. The team kind of fell apart. And when it kind of got into normal Big Ten play with a little bit more of a pattern, a little bit more practice schedule, and be able to establish it, the team's gotten a lot better. And Juju is the number one case there. And honestly, right behind him, we can't go without mentioning the Canadian, Mr. Swanton Rogers, the guy that develops posters.
Right behind him, but he's making an appearance. He's making his appearance known.
It's the next year, thought process. It's the poster developer is a guy that I think people kind of forgot about on the bench. That
you said you wanted a Checo.
I needed a Checo, and I think he could very easily be a Checo plus. And it's good. That's what you need. You need a
how good did that feel, man? The posterized dunk on Dickinson, that was fucking great.
And they followed up with one against Minnesota this last week. That's what he does. He develops posters. Guy from Canada.
The enforcer. Obviously, I think he's kind of you just didn't really know what to expect. Very just a little bit more raw of a prospect kind of coming into Maryland. So yeah, obviously just being able to even though it limited minutes, a lot of closeout minutes, still being able to see that efficiency on both ends of the court from him is definitely kind of build a confidence for the future of the front court.
He's been effective in the little bit of opportunity he's getting. So that's all you can really ask for from him right now at this point. But then again, and then the icing on the cake, the
most consistent one,
Mr. Consistency himself, the guy who's been there throughout the entire year, man, Jameer Young, proven to the world that not only can he play in the Big Ten, but he's going to end up being an all Big Ten by season's end at the rate that he's going, man. It's just, again, last year we had some transfers coming in, and you looked at Fats Russell and you thought, God, this kid's going to be exciting. He's going to be fun to watch. And yeah, he was those things, but man, Jameer Young is just on another level as far as just a complete package total player, and he's just fit in seamless with this Kevin Willard program.
Yeah, I think he Fats. You definitely see some similarities there, but I think just Jameer, just kind of his efficiency is to be able to kind of balance really being a facilitator and a scorer inside and out. Yeah, it's been pretty impressive, and I agree with a lot of people saying he makes a pretty strong argument as first team All Big Ten selection.
Absolutely. I already kind of told you my trajectory of this team, and I think that this team can be an NCAA tourney team. I think as high as maybe a 7 or 8 seed. How do you guys see this team shaking out for the rest of the year? You think they're a tourney team?
Yeah, I feel very confident. I think the seeding, I could see. So let's uh, maybe it could be a 6 or 7 seed depending on if they beat Purdue. Now I will say I did just look it up, and the Purdue game does happen to fall 10 years after to the day after we beat Duke. What was it? Obviously
Oh
in
boy.
2013. That was my junior year, and Scott Van Pelt's Twitter banner is from that game, and I'm still in the bottom left corner. Not gonna flex at all,
I
but
did not know that. Now I want to go
yeah.
run and check.
I
Bottom
will
left corner.
definitely be checking that after this
Shout
episode.
shout out
So
shout
funny.
out to the shout out to the Sid McKay pledges who were holding my buddy's place in line to help me get that seat. So, but
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I think if they can win that game, then you're obviously going to be pushing into contention to be ranked. And if you're in the top 25, you're pushing at a maybe 4 or 5 seed, and maybe maximum 6. So I could kind of see that range for Maryland, but if not, that 8-9 line, I'm perfectly cool with that. Seen some matchups against UNC, some against Duke, so
Oh God, I would
cross
love
my
that.
fingers right there.
I
It's
would love
10
that.
years after Duke, but it is only 90 minutes after rush hour. So I just
Even if that's the only game that we get, and that's the game that we win, and we lose in the second round, if it's over Duke in the first, I would be so happy. I'd
Oh
be
my
so happy.
god.
That would make my season complete.
Yeah, I mean, my best friend is doing his bachelor party the first weekend of the tournament, and I'm not gonna lie, if Maryland Duke is in there, I might have to give up my spot in the wedding to get to this game.
Ryan, if that's the case, we're going. That's going to be the one road game for the Terps basketball squad we're going to go
God.
to this year. Or at least I'm going. Fuck you
got
then.
the
If you don't want to
dip
go,
it.
I'm going.
Holy
with the
shit.
clear with the wife, but I'm down.
We'll just tell her it's a golf trip or
All
something.
right. I also believe they will be NCAA tournament team. I'm less confident about Purdue, mostly because I'm less confident about our fans. If we fill that stadium, we can really make this hard on them. It truly has been a difference maker. Another fan shout out Rudy, bringing back the "Hey You Suck," the rock and roll part 2 has completely brought back who and what the Maryland fans are and what makes us different than the rest of the Big Ten that just sit there and spell things.
Rudy
right?
almost got thrown out of the
This-
game the other day.
The assistant coach tried, and what did the assistant coach do? Gone back and sat on the bench, all sad. So my 2 favorite follows on Twitter. If you're not, I'm sure you are. If you're following us, Chuck Douglas and Rudy Gersten. Is that the?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Some of the biggest and best
DC
fans
Barno,
of
I
Maryland
think.
basketball and football. Yeah, at DC Barno is Rudy's Twitter handle. But just done great things. I would love to have Rudy, especially on the show. Let's do a full
We can make that happen.
dig into what the history of Rock and Roll Part 2 is, how it started, why it was killed, why it's back. Let's do the whole thing, Rudy. We'll make it awesome. We'll put this thing on ESPN 30 for 30.
All right. So last question around the basketball squad. Kevin Willard. Think he's got a shot at Big Ten Coach of the Year?
I think so. I was actually talking about this with Googs earlier in the week. I think he'll be third, and I have Northwestern, Chris Collins. I think he'll win. Who did I have second?
Even with a win against Purdue? Let's say they win against Purdue and they end up being a 4 or 5 seed.
Because Northwestern lost 2 of their best players this year and they were really bad last year. And I think kind of for them to turn it around, Steve Peichel, that was the second guy with Rutgers kind of just playing the way they do now. We'll see how they finish because I know right now they're, I believe, second in the Big Ten and they just lost a pretty key player. So we'll kind of see how they finish. But I think Willard will undoubtedly get votes. He'll get that recognition. I just don't know if I see him winning it. I think Chris Collins is probably the most deserving. And that's not because of Willard didn't do enough. I just think Collins is kind of one above and beyond.
I'll take your answer first, Fred, because I'm very confident in mine.
Well, I think the thing that sealed the deal for me was, and the move of the year for him was sitting Don Carey for the entire second half of that Michigan State game. That was the right move, and that needs to happen for the rest of the year. I just don't understand why we continue to put him out there. Like, his specialty coming over here was to be a 3-point specialist, and this team desperately needed that. And he has been nothing of that at all. These Georgetown transfers do not work, apparently. Wahab was terrible last year. Now we've got Carey, who's been awful this year. We've got young talent on the bench right now. Ike Cornish, you've got, the other guy, I can't think of his name. Noah Bachelor. I'd much rather see both of those guys out there getting these minutes than a guy that can't give you any production offensively. I get maybe he's okay as a defender, but I haven't really seen a huge drop off in Bachelor or Cornish when they've been out there defensively either, and they at least give you something, some sort of potential offensively. We just keep waiting for him to figure it out,
and they have a future. That's my biggest thing. Even if it's an even swap, like Noah Bachelor has a future here. This is the end for Don Carey. So if they're even close to even, develop Bachelor for next year. Don't just let him keep doing this.
So the reason I'll disagree, and I agree with the point of, yeah, obviously like Bachelor or Cornish, those they're long-term pieces, especially Bachelor, just with this being his freshman year. But at the end of the day, like you can't, like you got to let your shooters shoot. You got to let your shooters like shoot out of the
long time.
I agreed with that for the first 10 games of the year.
But we have to. So all right, so Maryland was competitive against Michigan State, and they shot 3 for 22 beyond the three. We've seen Don Carey being able to get hot on the road, at home. Like he hasn't been able to do it consistently, but he's been able to do it. And that's why I think like the 3-point shooting, like if Maryland, if he's able to, kind of find his groove going into NCAA tournament, you don't know like what happened. Like at the end of the day, obviously, yeah, you're right. Like he is the main shooter, like that's his role. And if he can't do that, then the Michigan State game, that is why. And I think we've seen Willard more likely to pull Carey. I think I can't remember which conference game. There was another game last month where he only played, I think 3 or 4 minutes in the second half, because again he wasn't shooting well. I just don't think the answer is to completely remove him from the rotation, because if you're a shooter,
he needs to come off the bench. He needs to come off the bench, in my opinion. I feel like Ian Martinez, Noah Bachelor, any of those guys starting, maybe psychologically it'll help him out and make things click, and he'll figure it out coming off the bench. We've seen that before
with
where
Wiggins
guys,
or Eric Ayala. Which one was it that they moved to the bench and it worked?
They rotated. It was both of them back and forth, but I think it was Eric Ayala who ended up going to the bench, then coming off. But
and again, I waited 2 seasons for Eric Ayala to get his shot back, and it never happened.
But you even see it in the NBA. There's just certain guys that are better in that 6-man role than they are as a starter, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we've gone this far into the season and haven't seen anything. Has he had a couple of games where he made a couple shots? Of course, yeah, but the majority of the games this year, he has just looked bad, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not just, oh, the shot didn't go in. Some of these shots are way off. I mean, really bad.
So, and Willard touched on that. I think against Michigan State, some of them, like a lot of the shot selection wasn't as bad, but yeah, I mean, Willard definitely touched on it. I think it's a lot better than it has been in recent years. But I think just the shot selection has been a little bit questionable. Rushed shots, and I think that's also kind of led to why A, 3-point shooting hasn't been good, and then B, why Carey's kind of struggling a little bit. But
I agree.
Yeah.
As a whole, it's just unacceptable. Though.
Sorry.
The fact, I understand nobody's playing defense versus me, but there's no reason that all 3 of us would definitely hit more than 3 threes out of 22 attempts. All of us. I would bet my house that we could just line up and do this. So
at least 11.
So you can almost see it in them. Like they get this almost. I don't know, maybe it's me that I'm carrying the anxiety and I'm carrying the tension that every time they shoot the ball, I'm like, but you can almost see it in them that there's like this tightness, there's this tension. But once somebody makes 1 or 2, it seems like that loosens up and everybody starts to kind of fall in place and get into a rhythm. But man, sometimes just getting to that 1 or 2 takes till 3 minutes left in the game.
All right, let me bring this back to where we started and tie this one up with a bow. Does he win Big Ten Coach of the Year where we started this conversation?
I think he's got a really good shot.
I think he has literally 0 shot, Fred.
Really? I think
zero shot.
I think he's got a really
The reason
good
he has 0 shot is exactly why I love him, and he will never win a Big Ten Coach of the Year because of it. Because he talks. Because he has told the Big Ten who they are. Because he has said everything they have done to us out loud. Because he has talked about the refs. Because he has talked about the schedule. Because he has not been a politician. He has 0% chance with it, and I hope he realizes to not put that as a bonus structure in his contract because he's never going to get it, no matter what he does. But it's cool. Win a natty. That's what you're here for, not a Big Ten Coach of the Year. Go win a natty and don't worry about the Coach of the Year trophy because nobody cares.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right. He is the most outspoken coach in the conference for sure.
In the country.
I wouldn't say the country, but definitely in the
Our
conference.
Mississippi
for sure.
football state coach, drawing a blank, just died, so we don't have anybody else that's talking shit as much.
Yeah, he is definitely a fans coach, man. The guy that like everybody, the diehards that wanted somebody to just be an outlier and talk up and speak up when things aren't going a certain way.
He's never gonna hate. Hey, you suck. He loves it.
Yeah. And like you said, there has never been a more entertaining press conference, man. It's been since Gary, that the press conferences have been this entertaining. He's a lot of fun to listen to.
All right, I think that's the end of the show, guys, right?
Yep. No more rants. I think we're good.
Okay. Just want to make sure before we dug into this.
Now you have 2 cuts.
Okay. Yeah, whatever. Well, I think that is about it. I don't know if we can yell at each other anymore. I think a month was a little too long for us to go apart. I mean, me and Fred talk shit about Terps pretty frequently, but to get all 3 of us back together and be able to yell in circles, it's been a lot of fun, guys. I'd want to thank all you listeners again. I'm sure at this point, all of you have us in your contacts that have listened this far into a show. But if you want to hit us up at shellandtellpod@gmail.com, send in your questions. We'll hit it on the next show. We usually put a mailbag out on Twitter, so follow us there if you want to do that as well. You can follow the show at shellandtellpod. Follow me at TerpsBExpert. Follow Fred at FredBLBS. Follow Inside the Black and Gold at Inside the Black and Gold, and the best Twitter handle on the internet at Gafir the Turtle for Ahmed himself. You always check us out at www.birdlandbs.com/shellandtell to get the whole scoop, links to everything we do. There's clothing there, anything you might want. Unfortunately, we don't sell these big hats yet, but maybe we'll get that in the works. Guys, I do want to give one huge shout out before we wrap up. A little shout out to the women's Terps, our basketball team. I think they're up to number 8 in the country, might even be 6 at this point. They had a big game this weekend. They played, it was the Pink Classic, the breast cancer game.
Those jerseys were fire.
The jerseys were fire. The game was awesome, and it had a little tie pretty close to show. I tried to pull the audio and put it on here, but there's just too much applause for it. A very close friend of the show, Brendan Richardson, was down there with his wife. Not gonna cry. For the first time really in a group situation. She's 1 year removed from breast cancer, and signed up for the whole shebang and got picked to walk out with the players onto the court and recognized on the court. It was a really awesome moment for her and everyone else that was there and got recognized. It was pretty awesome, and I hope to go next year to see it in person.
That is cool. Well, as Ryan said, man, make sure you get out there and support the Terps. We got, I think 7 games before the Big Ten tournament starts. You got Penn State at home this Saturday. You always want to go watch us beat Penn State's ass. Do that at home. Thursday, big primetime showdown with number 1 Purdue, 6:30. So for all you guys that can't make it at 7 and can't make it at 9, 6:30 tip-off against number 1 Purdue. Make sure you get down there and support the Terps. It's a big game. It's a big weekend. Man, can't wait to see this team make their run for the tournament. It's going to be a lot of fun, the closeout this year. Ryan, sign us off.
Hey, well, you know that 6:30 tip means we're going to be sitting in 495 traffic for a couple hours. We just gave you an hour entertainment now, and we're going to send you a little bit more, actually. Mr. Ahmed Gafir sat down with the TBIF, the Football Foundation for NIL, and had a nice long interview. We were going to throw it in here, but we had plenty to talk about today. So keep an eyes and ears out. There'll be a second episode coming out very shortly.
Check the description below.
Yeah, we'll have the links below. Until next time, guys, grab a friend, shake them, tell them all their excuses are garbage. Bring them down to College Park with them and fill that stadium up for real. Let's not use the fake numbers. Let's fill 17,000 seats. Till next time, guys, here's to wishing all is well under the shell.